Chapter 2 of The Egoist. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Elizabeth Klett. The Egoist by George Meredith. Chapter 2. The Young Sir Willoughby. These little scoundrel imps, who have attained to some respectability as the dogs and pets of the comic spirit, had been curiously attentive 3 years earlier, long before the public announcement of his engagement to the beautiful Miss Durham, on the day of Sir Willoughby's majority, when Mrs. Mountstuart Jenkinson said her word of him. Mrs. Mountstuart was a lady certain to say the remembered, if not the right thing. Again and again was it confirmed on days of high celebration, days of birth or bridal, how sure she was to hit the mark that rang the bell, and away her word went over the county, and had she been an uncharitable woman she could have ruled the county with an iron rod of caricature, so sharp was her touch. A grain of malice would have sent county faces and characters awry into the currency. She was wealthy and kindly, and resembled our mother nature in her reasonable antipathies to one or two things which none can defend, and her decided preference of persons that shone in the sun. Her word sprang out of her. She looked at you, and forth it came, and it stuck to you, as nothing laboured or literary could have adhered. Her saying of Laetitia Dale, "Here she comes with a romantic tail on her eyelashes," was a portrait of Laetitia. And that of Vernon Whitford, "He is a Phoebus Apollo turned fasting friar," painted the sunken brilliancy of the lean long walker and scholar at a stroke. Of the young Sir Willoughby her word was brief, and there was the merit of it on a day when he was hearing from sunrise to the setting of the moon salutes in his honour, songs of praise, and Ciceronian eulogy. Rich, handsome, courteous, generous, lord of the hall, the feast and the dance, he excited his guests of both sexes to a holiday of flattery. And, says Mrs. Mountstuart, while grand phrases were mouthing round about him, "You see, he has a leg." That you saw, of course, but after she had spoken you saw much more. Mrs. Mountstuart said it just as others utter empty nothings, with never a hint of a stress. Her word was taken up, and very soon, from the extreme end of the long drawing-room, the circulation of something of Mrs. Mountstuart's was distinctly perceptible. Lady Patterne sent a little Hebe down, skirting the dancers, for an accurate report of it, and even the inappreciative lips of a very young lady transmitting the word could not damp the impression of its weighty truthfulness. It was perfect. Adulation of the young Sir Willoughby's beauty and wit, and aristocratic bearing and mien, and of his moral virtues was common, welcome, if you like, as a form of homage, but common, almost vulgar, beside Mrs. Mountstuart's quiet little touch of nature. In seeming to say infinitely less than others, as Miss Isabel Patterne pointed out to Lady Busshe, Mrs. Mountstuart comprised all that the others had said, by showing the needlessness of allusions to the saliently evident. She was the aristocrat reproving the provincial. "He is everything you have had the goodness to remark, ladies and dear sirs. He talks charmingly, dances divinely, rides with the air of a commander-in-chief, has the most natural grand pose possible without ceasing for a moment to be the young English gentleman he is. Alcibiades, fresh from a Louis IV perruquier, could not surpass him. Whatever you please, I could outdo you in sublime comparisons, were I minded to pelt him. Have you noticed that he has a leg?" So might it be amplified. A simple-seeming word of this import is the triumph of the spiritual, and where it passes for coin of value, the society has reached a high refinement, Arcadian by the aesthetic route. Observation of Willoughby was not, as Miss Eleanor Patterne pointed out to Lady Culmer, drawn down to the leg, but directed to estimate him from the leg upward. That, however, is prosaic. Dwell a short space on Mrs. Mountstuart's word, and whither, into what fair region, and with how decorously voluptuous a sensation, do not we fly, who have, through mournful veneration of the martyr Charles, a coy attachment to the court of his merry son, where the leg was ribanded with love-knots and reigned. Oh, it was a naughty court. Yet we have dreamed of it as the period when an English cavalier was grace incarnate, far from the boor now hustling us in another sphere, beautifully mannered, every gesture dulcet. And if the ladies were, we will hope they have been traduced. But if they were too tender, gentlemen were gentlemen then, worth perishing for. There is this dream in the English country, and it must be an aspiration after some form of melodious gentlemanliness which is imagined to have inhabited the island at one time, as among our poets the dream of the period of a circle of chivalry here is encouraged for the pleasure of the imagination. Mrs. Mountstuart touched a thrilling chord. In spite of men's hateful modern costume, you see he has a leg. That is, the leg of the born cavalier is before you, and obscure it as you will, dress degenerately, there it is for ladies who have eyes. You see it, or you see he has it. Miss Isabel and Miss Eleanor disputed the incidence of the emphasis, but surely, though a slight difference of meaning may be heard, either will do. Many with a good show of reason throw the accent upon leg. And the ladies knew for a fact that Willoughby's leg was exquisite. He had a cavalier court suit in his wardrobe. Mrs. Mountstuart signified that the leg was to be seen because it was a burning leg. There it is, and it will shine through. He has the leg of Rochester, Buckingham, Dorset, Suckling, the leg that smiles, that winks, is obsequious to you, yet perforce of beauty self-satisfied, that twinkles to a tender midway between imperiousness and seductiveness, audacity and discretion, between "you shall worship me" and "I am devoted to you," is your lord, your slave, alternately and in one. It is a leg of ebb and flow and high tide ripples. Such a leg, when it has done with pretending to retire, will walk straight into the hearts of women. Nothing so fatal to them. Self-satisfied it must be. Humbleness does not win multitudes of the sex. It must be vain to have a sheen. Captivating melodies, to prove to you the unavoidableness of self-satisfaction when you know that you have hit perfection. Listen to them closely, have an inner pipe of that conceit almost ludicrous when you detect the chirp. And you need not be reminded that he has the leg without the naughtiness. You see eminent in him what we would fain have brought about in a nation that has lost its leg, in gaining a possibly cleaner morality. And that is often contested. But there is no doubt of the loss of the leg. Well, footmen and courtiers and Scottish Highlanders, and the corps de ballet, draymen too, have legs, and staring legs, shapely enough. But what are they? Not the modulated instrument we mean, simply legs for leg work, dumb as the brutes. Our cavalier's is the poetic leg, a portent, a valiance. He has it as Cicero had a tongue. It is a lute to scatter songs to his mistress, a rapier, is she obdurate, in sooth a leg with brains in it, soul. And its shadows are an ambush, its lights a surprise, it blushes, it pales, can whisper, exclaim. It is a peep, in part revelation, just sufferable, of the Olympian god, Jove playing carpet knight. For the young Sir Willoughby's family and his thoughtful admirers, it is not too much to say that Mrs. Mountstuart's little word fetched an epoch of our history to colour the evening of his arrival at man's estate. He was all that merry Charles's court should have been, subtracting not a sparkle from what it was. Under this light he danced, and you may consider the effect of it on his company. He had received the domestic education of a prince. Little princes abound in a land of heaped riches. Where they have not to yield military service to an imperial master, they are necessarily here and there dainty during youth, sometimes unmanageable, and as they are bound in no personal duty to the state, each is for himself with full present, and what is more, luxurious, prospective leisure for the practice of that allegiance. They are sometimes enervated by it. That must be in continental countries. Happily our climate and our brave blood precipitate the greater number upon the hunting field, to do the public service of heading the chase of the fox, with benefit to their constitutions. Hence a manly as well as useful race of little princes, and Willoughby was as manly as any. He cultivated himself, he would not be outdone in popular accomplishments. Had the standard of the public taste been set in philosophy, and the national enthusiasm centred in philosophers, he would at least have worked at books. He did work at science, and had a laboratory. His admirable passion to excel, however, was chiefly directed in his youth upon sport, and so great was the passion in him that it was commonly the presence of rivals which led him to the declaration of love. He knew himself, nevertheless, to be the most constant of men in his attachment to the sex. He had never discouraged Laetitia Dale's devotion to him, and even when he followed in the sweeping tide of the beautiful Constantia Durham, whom Mrs. Mountstuart called the racing cutter, he thought of Laetitia, and looked at her. She was a shy violet. Willoughby's comportment while the showers of adulation drenched him might be likened to the composure of Indian gods undergoing worship, but unlike them he reposed upon no seat of amplitude to preserve him from a betrayal of intoxication. He had to continue tripping, dancing, exactly balancing himself, head to right, head to left, addressing his idolaters in phrases of perfect choiceness. This is only to say that it is easier to be a wooden idol than one in the flesh. Yet Willoughby was equal to his task. The little prince's education teaches him that he is other than you, and by virtue of the instruction he receives, and also something, we know not what, within, he is enabled to maintain his posture where you would be tottering. Urchins upon whose curly pates grave seniors lay their hands with conventional encomium and speculation look older than they are immediately, and Willoughby looked older than his years, not for want of freshness, but because he felt that he had to stand eminently and correctly poised. Hearing of Mrs. Mountstuart's word on him, he smiled and said, "It is at her service." The speech was communicated to her, and she proposed to attach a dedicatory strip of silk. And then they came together, and there was wit and repartee suitable to the electrical atmosphere of the dancing-room, on the march to a magical hall of supper. Willoughby conducted Mrs. Mountstuart to the supper-table. "Were I," said she, 20 years younger, I think I would marry you, to cure my infatuation." "Then let me tell you in advance, madam," said he, "that I will do everything to obtain a new lease of it, except divorce you." They were infinitely wittier, but so much was heard and may be reported. "It makes the business of choosing a wife for him superhumanly difficult," Mrs. Mountstuart observed, after listening to the praises she had set going again when the ladies were weeded of us, in Lady Patterne's Indian room, and could converse unhampered upon their own ethereal themes. "Willoughby will choose a wife for himself," said his mother. Chapter 2